Good morning and welcome to our 61st episode of Business Unusual. And I'm super excited to introduce you to a fantastic thought leader in the space of thought leadership. And Gordon Treadgold is with us this morning to teach us all about becoming an influencer. And he has thrown down the gauntlet of ask anything. So we're probably going to have some pretty good questions about how you are going to apply thought leadership into your current prospecting effort. Just a really quick intro of this program. Business Unusual was started at the beginning of the pandemic to help business leaders that are either in transition and figuring out how to create a fractional service business, or startups or solopreneurs that are needing to pivot their marketing and sales efforts. So that's the context of our audience today, Gordon, and we are so excited to learn from you. So let's start with give folks an idea of what your business is now. So help people understand what you do.
So I do two things. One, I still run programs and projects in the digital transformation space, which I've done a little bit more of during the pandemic as speaking opportunities disappeared. And the other thing that I do is I speak, coach, and train on leadership. And when I talk about leadership, it's more about results-based leadership, transformational leadership, and not just some of the softer skills, authenticity, that kind of stuff. I am a big believer in that, but I'm also a believer in that, you can be the nicest leader in the world. If you don't deliver, you're going to be out of a job. So how do you marry those two sides of it, of creating sustainable leadership through being able to deliver and having the right skills to make people want to work with you a second time?
Fantastic. Well, we had one of our participants that introduced a question that I think should even preclude the questions that I have for you today. And that is, why would someone want to become a thought leader?
So why would you want to become a thought leader? I'm not sure that everybody does want to become a thought leader. I know my wife doesn't. It has no interest for her. She just poodles around doing the stuff that she likes. But for any of us who want to be successful in the digital space, who want to be a speaker, who want to be an author, who want to run training courses, it's highly competitive, and we've got to do something that's going to help make us stand out from the crowd. And being recognized as a thought leader is going to do that. Certainly my speaking fees have gone up as I've become recognized by Inc. as a top 100 leadership expert, recognized by Global Gurus as a top 10 leadership experts. So that gives us a degree of credibility, and if we have the following as well, we can get the people into our list, which then allow us to start marketing our products to them.
Absolutely. So who is your prospect?
So my prospect, so this is one of those things that's, this is a question I don't like, because I fall into the exact same trap as everybody else. I say it's everybody. Anybody can be a leader, and then you end up marketing to everybody and marketing to nobody. You're trying to shoot people from a mile away with a shotgun, and it's just not going to work. So for me, I've kind of refined my target market down now. It's people who have been in leadership positions for 2 or 3 years, or management positions for 2 or 3 years, and who now want to make that step up to that next level in the leadership hierarchy, running a department, running larger teams, where you have to be able to, manage less and lead more. And a lot of us get trained in management, and we're left to figure out leadership for ourselves. And a lot of people get stuck. It's what I call for me, there are 5 levels of leadership. There's the informal leader, where people are leading, looking to try to get into leadership positions. There's the team leader. There's the expert leader, where your skills and expertise. So you might be an IT expert, and you get to be a leader in an IT project. And then the next two levels, it's the engaging and empowering, where you can lead people outside of your area of expertise. So you might be managing people in HR, supply chain, operations, sales and marketing without a background. And then the next level above that, which is inspiring leader. And for me, my market is the people that are in that expert leader and want to step up to that, inspiring leader. So more good managers looking to become great leaders.
Fantastic. What point was it in your career journey that you determined that you wanted to become a thought leader?
So
I'm going to take you back a little bit.
Well, there are a couple of things that happened to me. I was working for a company, and I'd just run a program for them for 3 years, where their goal was to save 210 million from operations, and trade that for a 5% reduction in operational performance. 210 million versus a 5% performance drop. Yeah, let's do that. And I actually saved them 350 million, so 140 million more than they were looking for. And I actually improved performance between 50 and 500%.
Now, were you an employee at the time, or were you an independent?
I was an employee. And
Okay.
for the 3 years I was running that program, my boss had 8 direct reports. He had 1,300 staff. I managed 1,000 of them. He had a 350 million budget. I managed 300 million, and the other direct reports managed the other 50 million and 300 staff. And every year, in spite of saving an additional 140 million increase in performance, I was ranked 8th out of 8 of his direct reports. And when I asked him why this was, he said, because the results are great, but we value leadership over results. And of course I thought, bullshit, everybody wants results. We've got enough people that everybody hates them, but you leave them in the position because they're getting you the results. And I've got people queuing up to work for me, and I've delivered all these results. And I said, it's probably because of my leadership. I went, no, you're the worst leader in our department. And this was in my performance review. And I came out of that and I said, right, I'm going to become a world leadership expert. I will show you.
When was this?
This was 2012.
Okay, so 10 years ago was when you made that determination of this was going to be this was your goal.
Yeah, and at the time, it's funny how we tried to set goals for ourselves, and I thought, well, that's a little bit of an ambitious goal, and I thought, let's be bold. Stephen Covey's passed. That spot is open. I wanna see whether I can replace Stephen Covey as one of the top 5 leadership experts in the world.
As my grandma always said, it's no hill for a stepper, right? Here we go.
So, yeah.
Okay, so now you're on the path to doing that. So fast forward to today, there's a lot of water under the bridge.
There was another reason for doing it as well, because when I started doing it, for me, being an influencer, it was about, producing content. I thought, content. But the problem is, if nobody's reading your content, doesn't matter how much, if you're the world's greatest shower singer, you will die unknown. And at the same time, my son was completing his degree in music performance. And I thought, what I look to do is I look to see how Twitter and Facebook work, so that once he's finished and he starts to launch his band, I'll be able to help him with the social media. So I started trying to figure out Twitter and Facebook. And then as I did that, and pretty quickly my son just said, Dad, step away from the computer. This is for kids, not old farts like you. And so I ignored
I'll
that.
Show him.
Well, no, I thought, I'll try, because I'm pretty good at figuring stuff out. And then what I realized was, I've built an audience of 50,000 on Facebook. wow, why don't I now start sharing my content with them? And then I built a following around 50,000 on Twitter. So I created my own audience, and I was creating my own content. And I thought, okay, now I introduce my content to my audience and get them to then share it out. And as we go, and that's one of the, you know, it's great that we think we are an influencer because we're producing content, but if nobody's saying you're an influencer, then you're not an influencer.
We're
You're
back
a
in the
wannabe.
shower again.
Yeah, you're a wannabe influencer. For me, that's the difference between a real thought leader and somebody who wants to be. It's when other people say, yeah, they are a thought leader, that you're really doing that.
Okay, so you've got the recognition. So you started on Facebook. Was that the platform that you really dove into first?
Well, Facebook was the platform, and it was during the Arab Spring, and I was leading a team of 1,000 people, and I had quite a large team in Egypt and Tunisia, and as they were going through the Arab Spring, I started sharing my content, with work colleagues who then started sharing it throughout the Middle East, and then boom, the next thing, I've got 35,000 followers in Cairo. And you're trying to work the algorithms and get people from the US. Facebook made that quite difficult, and we're looking for money to do that. And I thought, to be honest, if 100,000 people are following me, that it will make me look like an influencer. And it doesn't matter whether they're in the US, Germany, where I was living at the time, India, or Egypt. So, I started sowing the seeds where the crops were growing. So I ended up building a following on Facebook of around 260,000. And at one time I had like 70,000 followers in Egypt, 30,000 in Tunisia, and a lot of India and Europe, and about 10% in the US. And a lot of that was because I hadn't figured out, I tend to write in the morning. That's always a good tip. Find when you're most productive and then produce your content during that period. It'll just come out so much quicker. So I was constantly posting around 8 a.m. in the morning, which is midnight in the US. So in terms of algorithms, I was getting a lot more eyeballs on content in Europe and Middle East Asia than I was from the US. Once I moved to the US, then we started to see that flip over, and it started to grow the following in the US.
What was the content that you were creating, Gordon, and producing
I was
or pushing out?
I at that time I wanted to write a book, and I didn't know how to write a book. And I thought, okay, I'll start a blog, and I'll write blogs that are book chapters. So on leadership, I'll talk about goal setting, engaging teams, planning and preparation. And I started, doing that. I thought, once I've written 30 blogs, I'll then have a look at them and see whether I can arrange them into the chapters of a book. And then if I think it's got a good structure, then I'll expand each of those things to create the book. So I was writing about between 400 and 800 word blogs every day, doing that 6 o'clock in the morning, get up, boom, push content out. And at the same time, just about 3 months after that, I started writing my first book. And with leadership, it's difficult to write a book because you can't do boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy finds girl.
It's the hero's journey.
Yeah, and at the time I had 6 girlfriends, 6 female friends who were all going through chemotherapy. And the year before, I tried to run a quarter of a marathon and failed miserably. And then I decided I wanted to raise money for cancer, realized I was going to have to run a bloody marathon. And I started marathon training. And what I realized was that everything I was writing about leadership, I was actually doing to get a fat 52-year-old to run a marathon. And then I thought, I'm going to call it Leadership It's a Marathon, Not a Sprint. I'll have 26 one for every mile of the marathon, and I'll write, so chapter one will be about goal setting, and I would talk about how you do that in business, and then how I've done that to get myself, to set the marathon as a goal. And then I would kind of like have a marathon diary where I would be my own guinea pig for the leadership principles I'm trying to share with you, showing you how I'm going to get myself to run my first marathon. And when it came to the day of the marathon, people said to me, "Are you nervous about doing it?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I am, because I've written 25 chapters of a book that require me to actually finish the marathon now.
You have got to do it now. You were committed.
Yeah. Leadership, it's almost a marathon, not a sprint, isn't as good a title as leadership, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I ended up completing the marathon with 8 people who'd never run a marathon that I inspired to do it, along with me. And I say inspired because nobody runs 26 miles with you just because they feel they have to. They have to want to do that. So I was, I would write the chapters of the book, and I would just write it out as a blog, thinking, okay, even though I've written the entire book as blogs, nobody's going to read it in the appropriate sequence and then think, okay, I've read the book. I can, it's all content. And then when I come to do the book, I'll extend it, put a few more stories into it. And I had the book ready to go. So 6 months in, I finished the first. I'd been blogging for about 2 months, 3 months, and then 6 months later, I'd finished the first book.
And you publish those blogs daily, so 400 to 800 words a day. Yeah. That was original content every day.
Yeah, I've actually done 1,500 blogs, one a day, for 1,500 days.
Okay, I'm seeing a challenge in front of me. That's a lot of content creation.
Yeah, but again, I'm a problem solver, and I'm a mathematician by education, but my specialist skill is pattern recognition. So I looked at blogs and I thought, okay, what's the structure? Can I decompose it and make it easier to write blogs? And I found a way to do it, which I've shared with people that's allowed them to boost their content. And every piece of content has got 3 distinct components. First component is the media. Is it a written blog? Is it audio? Is it video? So you can take one piece of content, write it, record the audio, record the video. That's 3 pieces of content. So there's a way to triple your content right out of the gate. But I actually did 1,500 written articles, and that's plus the ones I've done for Inc, Entrepreneur, and some of the other places. And then the other 2 components of a blog are concept and context, the idea and then the example. And I think the problem people try and do is they try and come up with new ideas. Mm-hmm. Good luck with that. Einstein came up with 2, special relativity, general relativity. And ideas are difficult to come up with. But if you know all of the ideas and concepts of leadership, things like, it's about the people, it's about recognition, leadership is about position, it's about action, not position. Once you write down the 8 or 9 well-known concepts, all you then have to do is find examples of that. And every time you see a great example, you can then tie it back to the context and create a new piece of content. So I read an article about, I'm a big fan of Ella Fitzgerald, and I read an article about her, and I didn't know that her and Marilyn Monroe were very good friends. And Ella Fitzgerald was kind of plateauing at the clubs she could perform at.
Right.
And Marilyn Monroe, good friend, she called the biggest club in LA, and she said, I want you to book Ella Fitzgerald every day for next week. And if you do that, I will come down and I will sit front row. So I read that and I thought, okay, I'm going to write a blog called 3 Leadership Lessons from Marilyn Monroe. Number one, nurture the talent you see around you. Number two, leverage your network to find opportunities. And number three, make commitments and meet commitments. You said you're going to go, and Marilyn Monroe went. But it was because I already knew what the concepts were, and I'm looking for examples of them. I find content everywhere now. I'll watch a basketball game, and something might occur to me. I think, oh, I can write, leadership lessons from LeBron James, from John Elway, or from a movie, Gladiator. The emperor has position, no followers. Gladiator has the slave, he's the slave, no position. Everybody's following. And when you use it in the right context, it makes the idea, the concept, accessible to people. And if I had to teach 14-year-old boys statistics as a mathematician, I wouldn't be saying to them, a loaf of bread is normally $1.50. There's a 7% discount. What's the price? I would be saying LeBron hit 7 of 11 shots. What's his shooting percentage? When we put it into a context that is relevant to people and resonates, that's when we're going to make the connection. So, the concepts of leadership are already existing. They're not changing. So now it's about finding new examples to share things to a new audience in a new way that they can understand. And boom, that's how I've done 1,500 articles.
And that shifts your goal then from, instead of trying to tell people in every article how to become a leader, which is why they would hire you, you are now inspiring them to basically run that marathon with you.
Yeah, to see that, that's what Marilyn Monroe did, and that makes you a leader. I can do that. I can call these people. I can find people help. I can make commitments. So you're showing people by example, and often example of others, how they can simply go and execute and perform leadership.
So then, how much of your day, and help me understand this, because many of the folks that are on the call, I know, have very full workloads. They've got a lot of clients, they've got a lot of deliverables, and they also have a life. So how do you fit this creation of content into your day, so that, because I know you have children as well, and you want to spend time with them, and how does that work?
So when I started writing, I was leading a team of 1,000 people. I was working 10, 12-hour days, and I was training to run a marathon at the same time. Now, one of the benefits for me is I get up between 5:30 and 6 every day, weekends included. I don't need a huge amount of sleep, and it takes me around 30 minutes to write an article. So I would get up, and the first thing I would do is I would write an article. And it takes me 30 minutes. Now, for some people, they will say, oh, you can't do that. What about all the typos and everything? I've produced, I'm not a great, I have a degree in mathematics. I don't have a degree in English. I do make mistakes with my English, but more often than not, people read past them. Every now and again, I'll get somebody, I wrote an article in LinkedIn that had 350,000 views. And one of the people wrote to me and said, I'd love to share this article, but I can't because you've got 3 grammatical errors in the first paragraph that prevents me from sharing it. I was like, okay, so that's 1 out of 350,000.
I'll take those odds.
Yeah, I'll take that. Publish and be damned. So, and as I said, once you're looking at once you get the examples, they'll start to jump out at you, and then you're not creating content. You're just writing down what you've seen. You're converting that example to reflect. Yeah, that's right. But it'll take a little bit of time before that starts to happen. But once you've done that, you'll just see them all over. I'll go to a movie and I'll be going, oh my God, yeah, I'm going to write about this when I got blah, 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 blah. I read an article about Ella Fitzgerald and Marilyn Monroe, and I've written an article on leadership. Who saw that coming? So we just got to make that. We just got to make that change from stop trying to find new concepts, because even if you do a great job of finding two, you won't find a third, and you definitely won't find a fourth. But if you start looking for examples, then you can do that. And also, so you can have a lot of fun with content. I worked with somebody, I coached somebody, and they were an estate agent, and I said to her, "What are your 10 favorite houses in the world?" And she went, "Oh, I know that." I went, "There's 10 blogs." That's a whole series of them. And I said, you could write fun articles. You could write about the House of the Rising Sun. What do you think that would look like? How much do you think that would sell for now? And, you could talk about the old woman who lived in a shoe. And then what kind of shoe would be the right house for an upwardly mobile young woman, a woman with 2 kids, a woman who's looking to downsize? And these are the kind of things that would, if it's just always, how to find the right property at the right price, there's thousands of articles on that. You've got to do something a little bit quirky and a little bit different sometimes to stand out. That doesn't mean everything needs to be crazy, but you can always just, throw some stuff out there. And
it's funny, Kathy on our call wrote a blog post that was very humorous because it talked about her time as a wedding singer. And I think she ended up with the most views. So she does lean consulting, but yet she wrote a blog about that and tied it back in with what she learned about taking care of customers and navigating that entire relationship. So you're absolutely right. I love seeing how that plays out. So you started with content, and
yeah.
are you still doing the same path? Do you still publish a blog a day? When did that shift, if it
No, I probably, I think, once you've got 1,500, what you have to remember is once you've got 1,500 blogs, there are 7 billion people on the planet. The first time they come across your blog, that's a new blog to them. So we don't need to be creating new content all the time. So I occasionally write new articles. I probably do about 1 or 2 a week, but I've already built the intellectual capital, that shows that I'm a thought leader. When people say to me, "How did you get into the top 50 leadership experts in the world?" Well, at that point, I'd already written 900 articles. I appreciate the professors that know more about leadership, probably in one city than I'll ever know. But I'm producing so much content. But now what I do is I'm constantly sharing that content. So I tweet 150 times a day. So that content is constantly swirling around. What I do now, which is a little bit different, I look at repurposing that content. So I'll go and look at some of that. So I wrote an article, and I asked the question, and somebody said, "Oh, could you give me a couple of tips that I could do right now to improve my leadership?" So I went, "Yeah." So 4 tips to improve your leadership: smile more, it makes you approachable, it reduces it reduces stress.
yes,
Talk more,
that
tell
too.
people to talk more, communicate the vision to people, listen more. That shows people respect, and you might learn something, and praise more. So that was the blog. That was the blog I wrote, and then I wrote a few words, a little example for each of those. But now what I'll do is I'll create that. I'll go and record that as a 90-second video, and I'll share the video. So a lot of the content creation, it's taking those things and now converting it into videos. I've also created around 50 graphics. So a lot of, once I got to about 600 or 700 blogs, and I'd built my audience, it took me 2.5 years to get to 500,000 followers. And I thought, okay, how am I going to get to 10 million followers? I'm not. So what I'll do is I will go and write. I'll find out where I can write, where there are 10 million people following it. So I then started writing for Inc. and Entrepreneur, and Huffington Post, and I worked with a gentleman who said to me, if you want to write for Huffington Post, why not just write to Arianna Huffington and ask her? So I did that on Christmas Day, and on Boxing Day she wrote back and said, sure. So I started writing for them. And when I wrote for Inc have a very specific approach. They want you to write about listicles, so 5 reasons why your content will go viral, 7 reasons nobody's reading your content, or the one thing everybody forgets about content. So there's a lot of structure. So with a lot of those listicles, what I've done now is I've actually started creating graphics around them. So the 4 things you can do to improve your leadership, I've created a graphic. I mean, and you don't need to read the examples. All you need to know is smile more, listen more, talk more, praise more. Mm-hmm. So I've started creating those as content, and I put a lot more stuff out like that. Things that are, making the content more accessible and digestible. My whole thing is about making it as easy as possible for people to act on it. And then one other thing I would say, when you're asking me who my ideal audience is, the person I'm writing to, and this won't work for everybody, but at the time I started writing, I was 52, and I was actually writing to my 30-year-old self. These are the things I wish you had known at 30 that would have accelerated your career. So I had that very clear target. I didn't know who my target market was, but I knew I was writing to myself. So that, and that forced me to write in a way that my 30-year-old self would understand.
And that also puts you in touch with that up-and-coming manager that's in their career, recognizing they don't want to be overlooked for a promotion because they don't have leadership skills like you were.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I was, and I ran $150 million programs, and yet throughout my entire career, I was never in the management fast track. I was always overlooked for that, but then ended up leading the most complex projects because I was very good at, I like a challenge. I was very good at taking on the tough stuff and making it successful. So all these people, all these high flyers that were whatever it was they were doing, and yet I was doing all the work the high flyers should have been doing.
So how much of this was organic versus, was there ever a point where you purchased followers or did ads or any type of paid media?
So I bought followers when I was on Twitter, because the approach for Twitter is, to get followers on Twitter, you have to follow people. And once you got to 2,000 followers, you could only follow people up to 2,000 or up to the number of people that were following you. So once I got to 2,000, I was stuck. So I went out and I bought 20,000 followers. Not to say, hey, I've got 20,000 followers, but to allow me to follow another 18,000 people. So I bought them, and that then allowed me to go through that, and I would cycle people out. So there's always kind of a gap of 20,000 that, I could, for a month, I could go through and follow 1,000 people, 1,000 people a day. I used some tools to do that. There was a great tool called Manage Flitter, which was excellent because that allowed you to select people in a niche who were active. At the moment, it's very easy to follow people, but you don't know whether the last time they tweeted was 2006 or 2016. So that tool got banned. So now it's a lot of that's manual. But I'm at about 200,000 followers on Twitter, and I tweet.
You said 150 times per day. Do you spend most of your attention on Twitter? Is that, or how much is on Facebook and how much is on LinkedIn?
So the majority of my time I spend on LinkedIn, and I now have 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. I was using a tool called Linked Helper, which allowed you to specifically target people. I was actually running that for a client and we did 2,000 followers who were chiefs of police in a 6-week period. But LinkedIn has now clamped down on that and is limiting you to following 100 people a week. So Before we could do 100 a day, and that would allow us to build to 1,000 a month. But I use a tool called Social Jukebox. And Social Jukebox, I have all of the content. So once you've got 1,500 blogs, you can be tweeting out two or three of those a day. And when it gets to the end, it just cycles again. And within social, I've created libraries of quotes that I've done, videos that I've done, articles that I've written on Inc. and Entrepreneur. Within Social Jukebox, you can actually go and get things. There's a library of things like, tweets from John Maxwell or quotes from Arianna Huffington or female leaders or Zig Ziglar. So you can get that content. And a lot of people say to me, oh yeah, but you don't get the credit if somebody else tweets it. Well, I've
no, not so much.
Bullshit. I tweeted, I think it was something like "to be or not to be," and then attributed it to William Shakespeare, and somebody wrote back to me and said, "I love your words." I was like, it was William Shakespeare. But because I was the person that shared it with them, I'm the one that gets the credit. So, you can use your own content, you can use other people's content. And Social Jukebox, I think it cost me $12.99 a month. And, that allows me to tweet out 150 times a day. 200,000 followers. I'm generating 5 million impressions a month and 25,000 profile visits.
Off of $12.99.
Yeah, and what I do with that, that's a whole different story, and we've had that conversation.
We've had that conversation, and we are going to continue that, Gordon.
I'm working on that, but yeah, that generates 5 million profile visits. But I've also, as well, I have a free giveaway that I was offering, and that allowed people to get into my email list, which is around 10,000 at the moment. But a lot more of my real target clients are on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, a lot of people tell me, oh, you should only post once a day. Okay, when? 8 o'clock. Oh, great. So that's 24 times a day then. Because it's 8 o'clock 24 times a day. It's always 8 o'clock somewhere. So, for me, I think if you want to be national, post at 8 o'clock. If you want to be global, post at least 3 times. 8 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Europe, 8 o'clock Asia Pacific. I tweet around 6 times a day. And again, people told me it's too much. Okay, go and look at Gary Vaynerchuk's feed. He posts 6 to 8 times a day. And if you don't think Gary Vaynerchuk hasn't analyzed the heck out of it to figure out what's the best, then you've no clue. Well, you shouldn't be in the influencer business, basically.
Yes. And that's the thing that's and that's one of the things that's interesting right now is so much of this is changing now. So I have several folks on here that are just like me. So maybe, I think I've got 1,600 or 1,700 connections on LinkedIn, and almost all of them are people that I have connected with, or there has been either a conversation or a meeting. I haven't expanded beyond that, and I want to become more of a national or international thought leader around the areas of sales prospecting. So what would your advice to me be?
Get the tool Linked Helper. It costs $9.99 a year. Linked Helper, it used to run as a Chrome plugin. Now it runs as a standalone, and it runs an instance of LinkedIn within itself. And on that, for the I was doing something for an organization called Police to Peace. So I went in, and if anybody wants to get Linked Helper, we can come back and I could give you a 15-minute demo of it, and you would understand it very, very. It's not easy to use until you know how to use it. Then it's dead easy. But it's one of those things that you just need a little bit of help to do that. But what we basically did was we went into use the search facility within LinkedIn to identify all police chiefs that are second level connections. We tell it to collect all those. It puts them into a file up to about 3,000. And then we just sent a message saying, given that we are both passionate about positive policing, I'd love to connect and have you in my network. And we added As I said, we added 2,000 in 6 weeks, but LinkedIn are limiting that to 100 a week. So you can now do that 100 a week, but also what you can do is you can use it for messaging, doing mass messaging of people. So when I was speaking, I took a an unpaid speaking gig. Somebody asked me, would I come and speak at a university in Istanbul for the Easter weekend, and they pay for my flights and accommodation? And I thought, Easter in Istanbul? Yeah,
That'd be
why
fun.
not?
Yeah.
That would be fun. But then what I did was I went through my LinkedIn and I said, okay, all of my all my first level connections who are based in Istanbul, and then pull them into a file, and then I created a message and said, hey, I'm going to be in Istanbul over Easter. If you'd like me to come and speak at your company, reach out, let me know. I can give you a great deal. There's no travel costs, and I'll be able to do it at 60% of my normal fee because I'm already there. And GE Aviation reached out and said, we'd love you to come and speak at GE in Istanbul. So, they paid me $2,000 so I did one speaking gig that paid for all the travel, and the other paid me $2,000 to speak while I was there. So you can also pass, if you've got a course that you're offering, I could reach out and just say, oh, by the way, I've got this course. Or what I've done is I've got a PDF version of my book Fast that I just say, hey, I'd love to offer you this as a free book. I'm really passionate about Fast. I think it's a great methodology, and I'd like to offer you a copy of it for free. If you're interested, click the link, sign up. And that got 10,000 people into my email list, which now allows me to send them more content. What do I send them? Every week I send them one of the 1,500 blogs. That's all of the content that I can share with them. So I'm constantly repurposing the content.
And you have this automated through different apps that you're using, so that you're not communicating with 500,000 people.
No, Social Jukebox does all of it. Social Jukebox posts 6 times a day to LinkedIn. It posts 150 times a day to Twitter. It posts 5 or 6 times a day to Facebook. And you create the jukeboxes, which have got all of the content in, but then there's some high level stuff that you can put in. So for LinkedIn, I was using the hashtags hashtag HR, hashtag leadership, and there's a really good tool. Please write this down. It's called Write Tag. Let me just put that into the chat. There is a fee associated, but not to do a little bit of research. And Write Tag allows you to go and have a look at hashtags. And one of the things I found was that within the leadership hashtag had like 3 million followers, and management had 20,000. So I stopped using leadership and started using management. And the HR hashtag had around 900,000, but hashtag human resources, which, why wouldn't you just do hashtag HR, that had 20 million people? So I swapped those two out, and every now and again I'll just change them. Now, and one of the things about hashtags, a lot of people say to me, oh, I've created this really cool hashtag. Yeah, that's like creating a really cool name for your street, which is not in any atlas or any map or any GPS, which means it's never going to be found. You're much better off using the hashtags people are looking for, because hashtags are a signpost to your content. So you want to be looking at the most used hashtags so that your content gets seen by people who might not be following you but are following hashtags.
And that's actually, it's funny.
If I use hashtag Gordon Tredgold's expert content, that is a waste of a hashtag.
Well,
unfortunately.
When we started this webinar series, we were trying to think of what to name it. And I looked at what was trending on LinkedIn and the conversation around business unusual. And it's funny because about a month after we started, they also launched the Business Unusual daily kind of advertorial. But our title is Business Unusual Prospecting Through Uncertainty. But we get to piggyback on top of that hashtag. So.
Well, with RightTag, I was doing some work for a restaurant, and we couldn't use hashtag food because it's just overworked. Yes, it has a lot of viewers, but it has a lot of viewers posting. But what you can do is you can go, using RightTag, you can put in food and then show me related hashtags. And one of them, which had I think it was like 3 million followers, but not a lot of but not a lot of tweets, which means you're going to get seen, was food porn. Now, I was a little bit reluctant to click on food porn, not sure of being heard of
I can imagine.
But food porn is just about beautiful pictures of food. So we then started using food porn as a hashtag. But that's not a hashtag that would occur to us. So by using RightTag, you can go in, and on the free version, you can search hashtags and find ones which are underused, which ones are overused, which ones have got a lot of retweets. There was one we were looking at for the police to peace, and I think it was hashtag peace, and it only had like 80 tweets an hour, but it had 120 retweets. So there's a good chance anything you post is going to get retweeted, and that had an audience of around 8 million, I think. So you've just, and the other thing I would say, not everybody gets to write for Inc. and Entrepreneur. And leverage their audiences. But anybody that's blogging, if you're not blogging on LinkedIn, you should. And the other thing I would say about blogging on LinkedIn is that, we were talking about the lady that does the lean manufacturing.
Yes.
If you write an article on lean, go and find the groups on lean and share your content in that group. So one of the groups I share content in, so I'll write an article. I wrote an article 18 months ago that got 350,000 views. But I shared that in the Harvard Business Review group, which had 2 million people. And it was about, I think, called 10 things leaders say to inspire their teams. So I shared it in the Harvard Business Review, 2 million people. I shared it in HR.com, which had 900,000 people. I shared it in CEO, CXO. So, I actually went and pushed it out to groups where there are an audience. So don't just post it to where your followers can see it. Go to groups and share it in those as well. We've got to get our content out in front of eyeballs. Push it out there. Because if we can do that, my son is a fantastic singer. If I shared one of his discs with you, you'd all go, wow, what a beautiful voice. And yet he has 500 followers and he's wondering why he's not a multi-millionaire. It's because,
so the old fogey has killed it.
Sorry?
I love it. Circling back to what he told you about step away from the keyboard, Dad. And here Dad has over 500,000 and he's got 500. That is priceless.
And he's very, very talented, very, very talented. And he was speaking to one of the questions, why should you become an influencer? He was talking to one of the recording execs who was round at his house. I think he was a promoter for one of the other musicians he lived with. And they were saying, if you don't have 10,000 followers on Facebook, you don't exist. And he said, my dad's got 250,000. And the producer said, oh, I could get him a singing gig. And my son said, but he can't sing. He went, don't matter. Doesn't matter.
Got the followers. And on that,
he's got the followers.
Oh my goodness. So one final question and then we're going to wrap up. But my question that I have for you is, how can someone work with you? You have given us so much great insight. I know that we have just scratched the surface of what you have, and I'm very excited to have a conversation with you about one-on-one work. So how would one work with you?
Yeah, so one of the other reasons why I started working on content is because when your boss tells you you have no leadership skills, even though you're delivering, you think about leaving the company. And I was told that people would Google me. So I went and Googled Gordon Treadgold to see what it would say, and bizarrely, I am the only Gordon Treadgold in the entire world. So Google was empty, and I thought, crap, I need to fill that quickly.
Yes.
So people don't get the wrong impression. So you can reach out to me. Just look for Gordon Treadgold. If you want to email me, you can email me at gordon@gordontreadgold.com. I am going to look at running a global influencers course with Monty Clark, who you know. Monty and I are looking at setting that up. If you want to coach with me, feel free to just email me, reach out. Always happy to do a trial session. And I tend to book 5 sessions with people because, I share the information they need so they can make as much progress as quickly as possible. I'm not somebody who suckers you in, bait and switches, and you've then got to buy the next program. If we do 5 sessions, I'll tell you as much as I can in those 5 sessions so you can go out there and absolutely crack it.
What is your timeline? The timeline for your course with Monty, because I would love to help you with finding great people, because you've given us so much wonderful insight here.
Monty has COVID.
Yes, I heard about that. So 12 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just running a leadership course at the moment. So we're probably going to look at starting to, where are we now? We're in May. I hope we're going to have that done by the end of June, ready to roll.
Okay.
And it's probably
fantastic.
Going to be an in-person course, because I think part of what we need to do is we with leadership, we can either do it in person or we can record it and you can go and learn it. I think with the influencer, we need to do it as in person and then have like a membership group on Facebook or something, because what we want to be able to do is we want to get into that habit of multiplying each other's reach and influence. So anybody on here, if you write stuff, if you put at Gordon Treadgold on Twitter, I retweet everything where I get a mention. So if you copy me on something, I'll pass it out to my followers. You do that on LinkedIn, I will reach and share it out. And so, yeah, for me, it's kind of like a booster mind where anybody writes one piece of content, then we all share it. So we're leveraging our collective group. And one other thing I think as well, to be a thought leader, there's lots of places which list the thought leaders. If you are not known by them, they will not list you. Go and speak to them. Mm-hmm. Find out how you get onto their lists. With Global Gurus, Monty and I figured that out, and Monty went from being unknown to I think he's the
He's
9.
number 11, or I thought it was number 11.
Number 11 digital marketing expert in the world.
And he's right up there with Gary Vee.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, on the leadership, I'm on there with Ken Blanchard. I'm ahead of Simon Sinek, John Maxwell. So when you're on these lists, you can use them as leverage to reach out to things like Inc. and Forbes, and once you've created a lot, Inc. want to know that you're going to create content. They don't want somebody who's going to write one article. They want multiple articles. So once you can show you've written in places, then we can do that. And some of the other things we'll look to do is, like the lady that does the lean. If she was on the course and she wanted to do a blog on 5 benefits of lean, then I would happy to share that as a guest post. So Monty and I would look to help multiply and magnify people's content to help them on that journey. It's
fantastic. Well, I am excited.
Very good.
Sign me up. I'm in. So let me know. Keep me posted on where I'm supposed to be and when I'm supposed to be there, because I am all in and I'm happy to share this information. Because Gordon, you have certainly over-delivered today. I was so excited to learn from you.
Did we get to question 2?
Well, we're not really. So what we're going to do is I'm going to wrap everybody up, but I'm going to ask Gordon, do you have a little bit of time to hang out so we can open it up for Q&A after the recording closes?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will make sure in the comments below this video, I'm going to post Gordon's information. And then as the time comes closer, I will also add the link to register for the course that he and Monty are putting together. That will be available on YouTube. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, you need to get in, because we've got amazing people like Gordon and Monty and a host of others that share their insight knowledge. And my goal every day is to help you get in front of your next perfect opportunity and secure it. Thank you so much for listening today. It's been absolutely fantastic having you. And remember, you can get anything you want in the world as long as you help enough other people get what they want. Have a great day and good
Absolutely.
selling, all.